SNL Stats.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of SNL Stats. It is a bit of a takeover, all women. My name is Nicole, and I am your host. For those who don't know me, I do marketing for SNL Stats. I'm a panelist. I am hosting tonight. I have an amazing panel here. I am so excited to get into one of all of our favorite shows of 2021. Before I do so, I do just want to give you all some information about the podcasts that we have from the last couple weeks. If you're interested in some SNL content, if you want to kind of hold yourself over for the summer and revisit our finale coverage, our end of season coverage. So at the finale, we went live at 1:10 a.m. Eastern right after the show. It was a lot of fun. We have that up. We also have a roundtable from later that week where we kind of did a deeper dive into the finale episode. Then the last 2 weeks, we have done some coverage of the season at large. So we did a fantastic recap episode of the entire season. And then last week, we had a By the Numbers show with Mike Murray, who is our stats guru. That was a lot of fun. We went over screen time for the cast, screen time for hosts, a lot of really kind of little fun details that we have been geeking out about all year that we were able to put together for this By the Numbers show. So that will all be available all summer long for your SNL fix. But now, again, we're talking about Girls5eva, one of all of our favorite shows. And we have an amazing panel today, and I'm so excited to introduce everybody. So on my left is Rebecca North. She is a friend of mine from college and one of our newest and best and brightest panelists here on the podcast. We're so excited to have her. Rebecca, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk about this show.
Thank you. I'm excited to chat with you about it. I know you have a lot of hot takes, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say. And we also have joining us the senior TV editor at Collider. Liz, how are you doing today?
Great. I'm really excited to talk about this show. I got to speak to a number of members of the cast. I got to speak to some of the producers, including Meredith Scardino, who of course created the show. And yeah, it was great getting their insight on it. And I, in general, found it to be a delightful show, not just to watch, but to discuss.
I am so excited to hear your takes. We're going to kind of link everything that you've done. You've interviewed so many people involved with the show, both behind and in front of the camera. So grateful for you to be here today. And we'll kind of cue in everybody on all the stuff you've done so they can go check out your articles after the podcast.
Yes.
Okay, so just to kind of a bit of a disclaimer, we are going to have some spoilers today, so if you want to pause us, go watch the show and come back, that's fine. We also recommend just watching it, listening to us talk about it and then watching. There's really no wrong way to do it. It's just kind of your style. If you don't mind some spoilers, then just watch now. But if you already watched it a billion times over like I did, and you just want to talk about it and listen to people geek out about an amazing show, then we are here to do exactly that. Okay, so just a brief overview. So the show is a musical comedy TV series. It premiered all 8 of its episodes of the first season on Peacock in early May, and as of today, the day we are recording, it was officially renewed for a second season. So we are so excited about that. Liz, I saw you're very excited. How are you feeling about that?
Fantastic. Like, it was definitely a show that, I feel like we're getting a lot of shows, a lot of shows are getting that second season opportunity. And I feel like, for the most part, it's just really exciting to see them take sometimes what's a first season that's largely just setting up the premise and really move it forward and evolve it. So, and I feel very, very comfortable that season 2 will definitely go in that direction.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it had this feeling of almost a limited series just because it had so much, it covered so much ground. The character arcs and development were just so vast and deep, and so it could have even wrapped and not felt like a flop or a cancellation. To me, it felt like this full experience. Rebecca, what did you think?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. You would think with only 8 episodes, you don't really get to know the characters by the 8th episode, then you want more. But I really did think it could have been one season and have that whole arc. But then also there could be so many cool things that they could do with the ending. So I'm super excited to see what happens next, and happy that since I just finished rewatching it for the second time, I don't have to wait that long until the next season.
Yeah, that was a fast turnaround. Most shows, like, you don't premiere and then get renewed so fast. So that says a lot about the show and the reception to it.
Yeah, I mean, it varies a lot of times, but I'm not surprised that when they were crafting the season, they made a point of, giving it something that would feel like a satisfactory ending should the show not continue. Just because, especially working with a new service like Peacock, like these things can be really uncertain. And so I've talked to a lot of show creators where they definitely come into their first season thinking like, as long as I tell a really good story for these first episodes, like that way I'll feel satisfied. But also, of course, then making sure to set up reasons why we would be excited about season 2, which I think the show also does very well.
Yeah, exactly. I also am just kind of in this mindset of limited series right now, which the nature of TV and movies is different right now. And it's also the first show in a while that I've watched the first season of without knowing what the next one was going to be. I've kind of been in this binge mentality with quarantine. I've been kind of catching up on things that have already been having a few seasons. I don't know if either of you relate to that, but this was the first show that I've been so into in a while that was like, I was like, will they, won't they? And then they did. So I was happy about that.
Yeah, also Liz brought up a great point about it being on Peacock. This is really the first show I personally watched on Peacock, the reason I downloaded it. So I think that just speaks to the show's volume and likability that it's already renewed on a new streaming service.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think with the streaming world, I wonder if this show is probably the most high-profile new show that, Peacock has The Office, it has SNL, it has a lot of great shows, but the most high-profile show to premiere on it, I think. So I wonder if they sort of invested a lot into it and maybe they knew they were going to have a second season and kind of put a lot into it in terms of the planning process and the pipeline for Peacock. I wonder if that was a consideration of this show is a heavy hitter and it's going to be the anchor of Peacock in terms of new content. I wonder. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know if I would consider it the anchor quite yet. I had a fair number of big original shows that right out of the gate. I really liked their adaptation of Brave New World. Actually, it had a really great cast and some very interesting choices. But like this is their first big premiere in a little while that hasn't been based on any sort of pre-existing IP. It's certainly like because like they had they had the Saved by the Bell reboot / remix type deal, which was a lot of fun, but very of course very tied to that brand. And then I'm pretty sure Punky Brewster was also Peacock. God strike me down if I'm wrong about that. But so like the over the past few months, like we haven't seen a lot of original IP, but this is of course like Girls5eva, of course, is a completely original concept, but it is also of course very tied to the Tina Fey brand, which I know we're going to get into. But of course, it is not created by Tina Fey, as we discussed.
Yes, that is one of the things I definitely wanted to bring up and hear everybody's thoughts. It's an amazing group of people, the executive producers, the writers, but it was created by Meredith Scardino, and so she has been writing and producing all of our favorite shows. You've seen her work on Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Mr. Mayor, At Home with Amy Sedaris, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and she is credited on 9 episodes of Saturday Night Live, the home base of this podcast, and that was between 2014 and 2016. So she has kind of been all over the comedy space, the Tina Fey cinematic universe that is ever expanding that we love, and now she has very much her own footprint on it, and this is her project, and she's tapped on a lot of amazing people, a lot of great people are behind it. But yeah, so I'm curious what if you talked to her, Liz, if you had any other opinions on her or her work and kind of how this project feels like something she has been leading up to.
What was the one thing about the kind of the darker side of girl groups and boy groups like this and the research she had done into like legitimately the kind of crap that would happen when these groups were all the rage and how little they were paid and how badly they were manipulated. And what I find really fun about the show is how all of that is really present and active in the storytelling, but it also it still manages not to feel too dark. And I think what's been really interesting about, kind of the shows that Tina Fey has produced over the last few years is that they do take on some pretty dark subject matter sometimes, but they manage to do so with kind of a optimistic outlook, which is, I mean, and maybe if it was a different composer, I'd have a different perspective on it, because anytime I think about Girls5eva, I think about not just the original songs, but just like the very Jeff Richmond-esque like that was a terrible impression of what Jeff Richmond's music sounds like, but we know what it sounds like. It's become very iconic in its way.
Yeah, of course. And just so everyone's aware, depending on how much you've seen of it, so it's in addition to Meredith, Tina Fey, and Robert Carlock they're a dynamic duo. They have worked together on 30 Rock, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. He was a writer for Friends back in the day. Of course, Tina Fey was one of the head writers at SNL and one of the best cast members, an icon, a legend, etc. And and then Jeff Richmond is Tina's husband, and he is often behind the music in her work. I think didn't he do also, in addition to Mean Girls, he did the Mean Girls the musical. He did the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt theme song, right? I think that was all.
Yeah, he's the official composer of Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt's music. He has a couple of like brief on-screen cameos in 30 Rock. He played a one-man band at one point. He's sometimes the accompanying pianist for Jenna when she does it on the song. He's been working with her for quite some time.
Yeah, I love it. I saw Mean Girls on Broadway. I was lucky enough to do that because it wasn't open for that long because of the pandemic. I think it had about a year and a half of a run or so, maybe close to 2 years. So I mean, a healthy run, but it was gearing up to have Sabrina Carpenter, who is one of the Disney icons, play Cady Heron. I think she played two shows. She played 2 shows or 3 shows, and then pandemic happened. That would have added a lot of relevance to Mean Girls, I think, and gotten a lot of people there. We all know, or, if you know, you know, the Olivia Rodrigo, Joshua Bassett, Sabrina Carpenter situation. That would have added a lot of fire to the TXCU, Tina Fey Cinematic Universe. I hope she goes back and does the role again when the time is right, when Broadway opens in September. Maybe it'll be her, I'm not sure. But anyway, so we're talking a bit about behind the scenes, producers, writers, etc. And I think we're going to dive into the show. So Rebecca, I know you wanted to give us a little bit of a guide to the main actors in it, the characters, and sort of the dynamic of it all.
Yeah, so Girls5eva used to be a 5-woman girl group growing up when they were a lot younger, and then the 5th member passed away in an infinity pool accident. So they broke up, and after they broke up, and then there were the 4 main members of the current Girls5eva group, who is Dawn, who is kind of the main character in the whole show, I would say. Although they do have their own storylines and screen time, she is the main focus. She is a quintessential Tina Fey character. She is kind of a mess, kind of not. She is the leader after Ashley, the 5th member, passed away. She took that role herself, who is played by Sarah Bareilles. And then there's Summer, who's Busy Phillips, and she's kind of the hot, ditzy one of the group that just gives a lot of laughs. Like, there was a full storyline about her learning to make a salad, and that is the perfect way to describe her. There's Paula Powell in all of her glory as Gloria, and she is just a super hard-working dentist. She came out after the first girl group broke up, so that was a big part of her character development throughout the show. And she was divorced from her ex-wife because she was such a big worker and dove right into her work, whether it was Girls5eva or being a dentist. And then there's Wiki, played by Renee Elise Goldsberry, who was actually in Hamilton at some point. She is an incredible voice, and she's kind of the fierce diva-ish of the group. They have a term calling wikiing when you actually leave, because the first group broke up because she left them for a better opportunity and portrays herself as having this fabulous life, when in reality she's struggling just as much, if not more, than the rest of the group members.
Yeah, Hamilton, I'm one of the Hamilton nerds out there, and she won a Tony for her performance. It was amazing. She played Angelica Schuyler. like unreal. Satisfied. If you don't have to even see Hamilton, just her singing Satisfied, that's the Tony winning performance. Incredible. Liz, I want to go to you. What do you think about the casting here? It was such an interesting group of leads, and who all came from such different backgrounds and are so cohesive. So I'm curious what you were expecting from that group, and what you think the process was like in getting them all together.
Well, basically from the cheap seats, the way it looked, it feels very much like a group of people who just all, I believe a lot of people were just offered their roles. Like there wasn't an audition process. And I'm forgetting exactly how Sarah Bareilles might have fallen into the TFCU, if you will. But I know that, Busy Phillips had a relationship with, people involved. I know that, Paula Powell, of course, is an SNL legend and, has a long-standing, creative relationship with Tina Fey. Renee Lee Goldsberry has also dabbled in the comedy waters. And really, if you're a Girls5eva fan and you haven't seen it already, a thing you gotta go track down. It's on Netflix, I believe. Is the episode of documentary now entitled Co-op, which is a parody of the legendary documentary that was made about the recording of the cast album of Company. This is a legendary documentary, as you can tell from its description. But it does the episode Co-op features both Renee Lee Goldsberry and Paula Powell as key cast members of this failed Broadway production, and both of them are extraordinary in it, performing original songs that they had literally less than 3 days to learn. And there's a lot of great stuff in there, and so they already, that's, I think, a factor in how Renee Lee Goldsberry got involved, and it's just kind of like this beautiful synthesis of comedy and music nerdity coming together.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought Renee Lee Goldsberry was going to get overshadowed in the comedy sense, with Busy Phillips really getting a lot of the comedy attention. And we've seen Sarah Bareilles be funny. And then obviously Paula Powell, I actually was not really familiar with any of her work aside from her singing. So I really was so happy to kind of see her as an antagonist, per se, in this show where she was really hysterical and did such a good job. I really think when they cast these, I wouldn't be shocked if they wrote each role for the person, because that's really as it felt. Even all of the other recurring characters and the guest stars, they really felt so well written and so matched up. Then there's also, if you look at who all the characters are and the role they play, it does kind of follow that 30 Rock structure where everyone has their thing. It's essentially what is in a girl group, when each person has their role in the group, each person had their role in the show, and there was no overshadowing, and really gave them each a lot of time to shine.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think it also comes from the fact that all four of the main stars come from such different backgrounds. Their paths have all crossed, but when you think about it, Paula Powell was a writer at SNL for so many years, so that's kind of what she has done the most. She's acted a lot as well, but when you think of her and what she spent the most time on, it would be writing comedy. Renee Lee Goldsberry, I would think of Broadway acting and singing. Her voice is like, it's unreal. As she says a few times, her voice is so amazing that she is owed XYZ, her character says. And, she's kind of right, in a funny way. So she's, so Paula, think writing, comedy. Renee, think singing, Broadway. Sarah Bareilles, before Waitress, which she was the composer for, everything, like, I just thought of her as like love song. I thought of her as almost like a Taylor Swift, Olivia Rodrigo, just like kind of a singer. And this was an amazing avenue for her. So, so those three, and then Busy Phillips, of sort of like a comedy, silly, goofy actress. So those are all for such different descriptions. And I wonder if they were able to have such different angles and not overshadow each other in the way that they did because of that. I haven't seen a show that brought people together from such just different kind of specialties, if you will. So I don't know if what you guys think about that, or if you even can think of something that brought people together like this. I don't know. I think it's very unique, and I think this can serve as a a model maybe for other shows and a template of bringing people together from unlikely places.
Yeah, when I first saw the cast, it was so unexpected. I was like, wow, this is not, I hear Tina Fey and I hear Meredith and I'm like, this is not who I would have expected. I would have expected them. And they did a lot have their friends as guests, and frequent characters in their universes. But I do think that it was a cool way to bring a bunch of people together. And I definitely agree. It's more shows should be doing this.
So we kind of touched on it, but before we continue, do either of you want to sort of talk about your expectations going into the show and how that compared to your final opinion of it? When you heard this show, Peacock original, Tina Fey attached to it, all these stars that are, you've heard of them from different places, like what were you expecting? Rebecca, I'll start with you. What were you kind of envisioning for this?
Well, first I was like, this is a pull for Peacock. I mean, that's so great to have this type of name and this cast list on their show coming out when they haven't even had that many originals in their past. And I honestly didn't even watch a trailer before I watched it. Anything with Tina Fey, Paula Powell, I'm watching. And I was like, this might be cheesy. Girls5eva. I was like, what are they going to try to do? They're trying to relate to a Gen Z crowd, but it's actually more millennial when they're using 5eva as terms. And we could get to it later, but I do think they did that, but in a good way. So I honestly had decently low expectations solely based off the name. I was like saying that this was going to be pretty cheesy.
I didn't necessarily think it was going to be cheesy just because I, have a lot of faith in this production team. But I was curious as to how much they were going to lean on the nostalgia factor and the 90s jokes or the early 2000s jokes, as it were. And I found out the mix was really pleasant, and especially the fact that so much of the emphasis is not on their past, but on their present and on how, a group of 40-something women are approaching life at this point. And, think details like the fact that, Paula Powell's character is now taking care of her father. And, in the opening episode, we meet Sarah Bareilles' character getting a freaking mammogram. That is the sort of material that you don't often get to see, mainstream comedies take on.
Yeah, it's such a good point because it doesn't, in these sort of flashback type of shows, like one I can think of is Firefly Lane, which I loved, but this one is unique, Girls5eva, because it doesn't glorify the past one, that when it flashes back, it sort of uses the past as a vehicle to showcase growth and change and evolution, whereas other shows maybe will highlight, Firefly Lane used Vaseline on the cameras to make them look 20 years younger for the flashbacks, and the flashback parts were more interesting than the present day, or not even present day, but, like the 80s, 90s, 2000s compared to the 70s that it also included. But it's a great point, Liz. Like, it's more spending time using the, peak of when they're young and fresh, people want to sign them. It's using that time just as a vehicle for making the most of the present and understanding where they are now versus where they came from. And maybe that's why we had so much character development and growth over just 8 episodes, because we were able to set that up from 20 years ago. And again, a great kind of, plot device that I think other shows can kind of take look at and say, maybe this is the way we use flashbacks. We don't glorify when they were, young and kind of new on the scene. We use that, and then we say, this is great. The present is equally important and actually more important. So
an interesting thing, though, based off that, is when they had flashbacks, Gloria was a different character. They had a different actress play Gloria. Her name is Erica Henningsen, and they had her be young Gloria, and then every time people met Gloria for the first time, they were like, oh, she's like, Gloria, Girls5eva. So I don't really know why they took that choice. Maybe it's to show different, like, people's bodies change, their faces change, their lives change from when they were in these hit 90s groups. And then you could see that she could be just as great looking different than she did when she was younger.
Yeah, I was totally fine with the choice to cast a younger actress with a different body type. Like, I think that it plays for the joke. It plays for, not the joke even, just like the realities of life. and whatever they did to make the other three cast members look younger, it worked pretty flawlessly. I actually like I don't know if you guys have seen any of the show Hacks, but in the HBO Max comedy, there are a few sequences that feature what is supposed to be archival footage of Jean Smart's character doing stand-up. And guess what? It was not. They did not magically find footage from the 1980s of Jean Smart doing stand-up. Jean Smart has never did not do stand-up in the 80s. Instead, they did a very complicated process that involved recording Jean Smart, recording the dialogue, hiring an actor to play the younger version of the character, deep faking Jean Smart footage from the 1980s onto that actor's face. It was a whole thing. So I doubt that they did anything on that level for Hacks, on that level for Girls5eva. But it is sometimes all you have to do is put somebody in a halter top and then do a little, really pile on the foundation.
Yeah, I mean, also I will say, Paula Powell. There's an age range of the actors. Paula Powell is a lot older than, for example, Sarah Bareilles. So that she's, I think, whatever. There is a range there, but I mean, it's an interesting choice, and I do want to get into thinking about stereotypes and if this show was sensitive to certain stereotypes and arcs, or if it kind of undercut them. I want to get into that, but I mean, for example, Gloria's character, she is a queer woman who talks a lot about being repressed during the time of Girls5eva and unhappy and kind of, just going through the kind of the way people do of being closeted, and particularly closeted in the public eye. And, I think they did a really delicate job of handling her story, and sort of the fact that she's the one people don't recognize, if anything, makes sense because she is the most different now, because she's the most true to herself compared to when she at the time felt like she wasn't as able to be herself, and other people were, maybe a little bit ahead of her because they didn't have kind of to overcome that trauma. So I think it makes sense, and it's kind of beautiful actually that people are they don't recognize her, because it represents she is different. She is herself now, and she was more playing a character then, and she was struggling. So I think if anything, it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think they did a great job of leading you up to thinking that they're playing into stereotypes and then completely do it a 180 the other way. There was one episode where they were using Paula Powell's character, and they went to this Y2 gay festival showing, and she was like, I'm a gay icon, look at me. She comes, and then it's actually Wiki, who all these people are like, wow, you're a gay icon there. And Gloria expected herself, and they made it seem like that's how it would actually pan out. Or for another example, I think Summer's husband, Kev, there was a really rocky relationship, and it kind of made you think, and especially a lot of the dialogue leading up to it made you think that he was actually gay and living a whole nother life in Tampa. And when, spoiler alert, he was just tending to hermit crabs. So they would really take you to the place where they're making you say, okay, here are the stereotypes in your head, but you're wrong. Don't stereotype people. And I thought that was a really cool thing that they did.
Yeah, I mean, I think the implication that honestly was probably my favorite storyline in terms of the sensitivity and the nuance, because of course it led us to think this cliche thing of he is cheating on her and lying in Florida, and that's what we're led to believe the whole time. And then it kind of takes us one further. Just when I thought they were going to be so cliche, they said, it does sort of imply that he is repressed and having a hard time with his authentic self, and what he's doing in Florida with the hermit crabs who are in their shell, and all of those metaphors that you can take from tending to hermit crabs. It's one deeper. It's saying actually it's not so easy as he is cheating on her. It's he's not there yet. He's not at that point with himself of comfort and getting there. And so I just thought that was brilliant how they handled that. And I mean, the actor Andrew Rannells, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Big fan of his. So I thought the sensitivity there was great, and he he did so well, his performance. He's another like great Broadway guy. He was in The Prom, one of the more kind of redeemable characters in The Prom, which is a little bit controversial, but he was one of the highlights there and in here. So yeah, if either of you have any other comments on that storyline, I thought it was very, very well done.
Yeah, I think all of them were in the sense that we were saying earlier could have been a short series, and they left a lot of stuff ambiguous in the air, and they said, okay, we're not going to tell you exactly what happens. We're just going to leave you to infer what might happen. That's how it could have been a short series. But then having a second season, I actually hope they continue to do so with not writing everything out as much as like, oh, let's tie up all these characters now in the next season. They actually hope they just like keep developing it that way.
Yeah. Okay. So are there other moments that either of you want to get into? I want to spend some time just if there's like your favorite song, your favorite scene, like just let us know. Either of you guys.
I feel like the whole sequence around, I'm forgetting the exact name of the song. Hopefully one of you have it up in front of you. But Sad Lonely New York Boy.
Oh, I'm glad you brought this up.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh, we have
New York Lonely Boy. But it's like, it feels like something, it's one of the few elements of the whole show that don't feel like directly inspired by the whole girl group, boy group concept. It just feels like a very New Yorker phenomenon that they're just like, kind of observing and importing into the show. But yeah, that really stuck with me for some reason. I feel like I felt something in there.
Yeah, that was the exact moment I was going to bring up, because we can all name a New York Lonely Boy off the top of our heads that we know. And I instantly thought Dan from Gossip Girl, and they always called him Lonely Boy. They had him in the uniform. They had him like alone. And that's what I instantly went to. And it triggered stuff in your mind. All their little jokes really did that.
Yeah, I agree. I've lived in New York City my whole life, except for college, just like a couple hours upstate. But I, through and through, like, I felt that so much. The best part to me was the Michael Barbaro part where they're talking about his podcast, The Daily, for the New York Times. Like that caricature of a boy would listen to The Daily with his parents in the morning with coffee in the New York Times. That was funny. And the John Slattery part, how he made a cameo, I think, as himself, a semi-fictionalized version of himself, who he was like, it's okay, I have a New York Lonely Boy too, it's okay, he's gonna be fine. However, here's the thing I did not like about it. It is like Dan Humphrey, but that term, to me, it was sacred to Gossip Girl, because Lonely Boy in Dan Humphrey was this very specific archetype of a person and a character, and New York Lonely Boy, there are overlaps, of course there are, but it's sort of like this is overriding that canon to me. It's like picture a VCR that I haven't used in 10 years, but it's like, when you record something and then you record something later and then what you recorded before just disappears. Like, that's what I feel like they're doing to us with the Dan Humphrey Lonely Boy. And it's like, I mean, it's kind of gutsy to take that term and I'm going to make up a word, re-canonicalize it. I made that up. But you know what I mean?
But I mean, I as someone who wasn't, I've watched Gossip Girl. I would not say I worship at its altar. But I will say that, that did not bump me at all. I probably was more thinking about, if anything, it was, like the early internet phenomenon of Lonely Girl 15. But that's a deep cut reference for your viewers.
You want to get into that a little bit for maybe like the more Gen Z people, a little bit about the
oh gosh,
for me.
Yeah, me
yeah.
too.
Oh gosh,
it's like vaguely familiar to me, but like I need a little bit more.
Lonely Girl 15. This is such a weird tangent to go down, but Lonely Girl 15 was this web series that started off on YouTube, and it was the what they did, which was kind of genius with it. This is like 2006, 2007. So the concept of telling stories online is through digital video is very, very new. And so what they did was they basically started off this vlog series where this girl's just talking to her camera and talking about her friends and talking about her life. And then slowly but surely it was revealed that it was actually it was actually a story being told. It was all fictional. The girl was an actress, and it was actually this kind of set the internet afire when everyone found out that Lonely Girl 15 was actually fake. And
that's so cool.
It was actually, I mean, in retrospect, it was a really wild choice, like, because basically, slowly but surely, what was being revealed was that Lonely Girl 15's parents were in a cult, and it was kind of a dark and sinister cult. It kind of took this weird horror turn at some point. Yeah, Lonely Girl 15, man, it's a wild rabbit hole to go down, but worth considering. So, yes. Anyways, that is where my brain goes when I hear the word lonely and then another word that relates to a human being. But we can get back to talking about the Girls5eva.
Yeah, I actually did have a remark, when we were saying before that there were references, like that Gossip Girl reference or Lonely Girl 15 reference. In that sense, there were so many constant references, and a lot of them were very Gen Z focused. And I actually think that they did a really good job of, because not to my knowledge, there's not really a Gen Z sitcom-y show that you're hearing all these younger people talk about, especially because most people can't sit and watch 30 minutes of TV because they need 6 seconds of TikTok. But I think that they did a good job of not only giving references, but also making fun of Gen Z, so that for an older crowd, then I don't know where I am. I don't even know what I'm considered at this point, but I was like, they mentioned Dixie D'Amelio at the end. Like, they were making all of these, like, it was reference after reference, joke after joke. And to me, I was like, okay, I get it. But also to my mom, per se, she would watch and be like, oh, that's so funny. They're speaking another language. Which Gen Zers speak another language to my mom? So I think that they did a really good job of trying to attract all crowds, because I personally can't think of a sitcom, and while everyone binges the old shows like Friends or even 30 Rock or Parks and Rec, which, as we know, are not old, there's not a good show on TV right now. And I thought Mr. Mayor might do that, but I don't think that it worked as well as they were hoping for it to. So I think this being on a streaming service and then also making so many references that either you can make fun of or you could be like, oh yeah, that's so funny. Like, I think they did a good job that way.
Yeah, they did a good job, I think, of unifying everyone, because Gen Z will love the show because they can relate to the references, and everyone else, millennials and above, which, by the way, like, I saw this thing the other day that was like, if you're between 1994 and 1998, which I think you and I are, Rebecca. It's like,
yeah.
We don't know what we are, and it's
exactly.
We don't really want to be either, but we're kind of both. It's a whole mess, literally. It's a mess.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, trust me. I gave up on these labels years ago. Like, sometimes I'm a millennial, sometimes I'm not. I don't exist anymore. I don't know. I'm just old. I'm just old and tired, and I just want my tea, and I want my tea, I want my cookies, and I want a nap.
Yeah.
But I think what I do think works about Girls5eva is that they do have they do have references that I would personally consider slightly beyond my knowledge. Like the Dixie person you just mentioned. There's a reason I'm calling her the Dixie person you just mentioned, rather than remembering her actual name and vaguely guessing that we're talking about a person of the female gender. But I do think that they mix in like older references, more timeless references. Like, this is always the toughest thing with like comedy like this, is that you want to create jokes that feel sharp and relevant and that, play upon stuff that people are familiar with, but you also want them to have the ability to age to some degree. And I personally find it fascinating to go back and watch stuff that was made even just like 10 years ago and see what kind of jokes they put in and what kind of jokes played. And there was a lot of even like watching SNL, like there's always times when I feel like there's a sketch, and it was like there was that sketch in the pre-tape sketch this a few months ago, where it was like not even just a few months ago, just like 2 months ago or something. But it was it was like the first party back after COVID, and there was a joke in it about how somebody was like, "Oh, I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine," and someone just edges away from them. And what's so funny about that joke to me is the fact that that joke will not make sense in 5 years to anyone. In 5 years, very few people I think will remember that Johnson & Johnson had a 73% effectiveness rate in studies versus 90-something% for Moderna. Like, but anyways, that's a bit of a tangent. Point is that I thought Girls5eva did a really nice mix of the references, both ones tailored to a younger audience and ones that would fit for an older audience that was familiar with things like TRL and its heyday and stuff like that.
Yeah, they do a good job because it's like it's the Gen Z references, but then it's everyone else interacting with them. So it's these women in their 40s like being approached by these Gen Z references that they don't like understand, and they're kind of inserting themselves into the mold that they thought they had to be of like the young 90s girl group. And so they're like, oh, I guess I have to like know what this is and this makes sense. And then, they blossom more and more and can kind of like realize, okay, I know what the references are, and they do their own thing. But it's unifying to have, I think, a group of women who are not Gen Z interacting with that stuff. And it's like everyone can find some slice of that to relate to. Are there any other moments that you guys want to kind of highlight from the show?
I loved when they went to that Airbnb upstate. I don't remember the host of like the Airbnb's name, if either of you remembers, and I don't even think it's important because just the character alone, and just to fill people in that haven't seen it, the girls went on a retreat to upstate New York, and they actually were staying at Airbnb, and there was a door that is like, just don't enter, like it was the host's room and they needed a Band-Aid. They opened the door and the host is just sitting there. And she is so bizarre, and she really leashes onto Sarah Bareilles' character. They're like trying to take care of her. They feel bad making her stay in a closet the whole time. But they also really have to work. She was just like this annoying character that was just making me laugh the whole time. And then the best part of the whole episode was the last 5 seconds when she's singing to herself with this most gorgeous voice, and it's like such a joke. She was like, oh, maybe I should have mentioned that to them. No, they would have thought that was annoying after she mentioned every little detail about her life besides the fact that she's an incredible singer. So I just thought that whole episode, while there were a lot of other storylines, like we'll never see her again, and she was probably one of the more memorable characters in the show.
Yeah, totally. It was also like, I just love this type of humor it's using like absurdist, weird scenarios, like an Airbnb host who stays and hides in her closet while somebody pays to be there. It's like, I'm sure that's a thing. Like, it's kind of genius. There must be people who do that, and we don't know, and we've never known. And that's what I love about this style of comedy is like, it's absurdism that's actually so grounded in a version of reality that we just don't like think about. Like, of course there are Airbnb hosts who do that. Yeah, I love
Daphne.
that.
Daphne was the name.
Yes. Yeah, great voice. She was very, I love that episode. I'm glad you brought that up, just thinking about the absurdism and all that. I do want to talk about, so, this is an SNL podcast, so of course there's so many SNL people in here, Paula Powell, Tina Fey, a lot of writers. I believe Anna Dresden wrote 2 of the episodes. I want to talk for a second about the star that is Bowen Yang. He had an amazing turn. He was like one of the highlights. And also a fun fact, his character, if for those who haven't seen it, he is semi-famous online for these YouTube like lip syncing of divas. So like a wiki, for example, or like an art for real people like an Ariana Grande or Lady Gaga, these sort of like queer icons. So like a wiki is sort of an equivalent to that in the Girls5eva universe. And Bowen actually, before he was as famous as he is now, that's kind of a big thing that people knew him by. If you Google it, he did that, which is so cool, and it makes me wonder, like, how I feel like this was sort of like tailored to him, So yeah, what did you guys think of seeing Bowen? I was so excited. I thought it was a perfect, whether he had done that in real life or not, I thought it was a perfect kind of match for him, and being in the show and the role he played and getting to see that side of him was really cool.
Anyone who's listened to me on SNL Stats before knows that I, stand him intensely. I think he's fantastic, and yeah, anytime. I think he is one of the many examples in the show of actors who were written for very specifically. Like, I think pretty much, I would imagine the lead roles were written for the actors involved. But even like there were a lot. I'm sure the pitch in the writers' room was, and then Bowen Yang shows up and does his lip sync thing. Like, and why not?
Yeah, I thought that whole episode itself was an awesome episode to really focus on the LGBTQ plus community. And I know how much, so I'm like a devout Drag Race fan, and I know how much a lip sync is important. I know how much Bowen appreciates drag and then Drag Race. I listen to Las Culturistas. So I think that that lip sync was so important to just be a nod to that community. While the whole event, the Y2Gay event in the episode, was just so brilliant. And I think it was an awesome, like, mini Pride event there in the episode itself. And really, even to people that are maybe not as familiar with the space. And I know a lot of these sitcoms in the past don't necessarily dive deep into the queer community and really show a lot of that culture there. And without him even being a character, I feel like a main character, he made such a big impact on that. And I think it was just a perfect episode and incredible casting.
Yeah, incredible casting. Also, again, we're talking about these nuances, like the sitcoms that would be compared to this 10, 15, 20 years ago. Like, you know, there would be gay characters, but they wouldn't have these, like, nuanced things going on. Like, as you said earlier, Rebecca, Gloria having to confront the fact that Wiki is the gay icon in the group. It's like, that's a real thing, you know? Like, she had to be like, wait, this is me. Like, you know, it's like, what is Wiki just like, has, you know, and it's like, it's, and I like them kind of empathizing with each other in that episode. And then of course, Busy Phillips' character gets in there with her research, and she's researching how to be a good ally, and has these funny, like, kind of like sanitized, like, answers to things that she Googled and copy and pasted, and like, and that's a funny, like, very authentic and genuine, but kind of dumb in her Busy Phillips way approach. And it was just like, it was so nuanced. And I think the show does a really good job in general with diversity, whether it's about, you know, the queer community, racial diversity. It's like, it just feels like it's sort of in the fabric of the show to be diverse. It doesn't feel like they were filling quotas by any means. It just feels, you know, like Dawn is in an interracial marriage and has a mixed son, you know, and it's like it was just like, yeah, you know, and there are shows right now that are kind of, it's not like that. It's like it's sort of like, it's clear that it's like people are having a reckoning, and not everyone knows how to approach diversity in such a just natural and organic way. And once again, this is my theme, I keep saying this, but I think that is another way that Girls5eva is an example, not just for, like, people who love TV and love comedy, but, you know, the industry. Like, take note, this is how you approach diversity in a way that doesn't feel like you're, like, thinking about it. It's just, of course it's diverse. That's the fabric of the show.
Yeah. Also, I know you bring up Dawn and her marriage to her husband is an interracial marriage, first of all, but I do think that their roles in their relationship were super interesting to focus on, because while Dawn was out there and she was working a lot more, and Scott had a job but was a more stay-at-home type of husband who wants another baby, Dawn doesn't want another baby. Usually in that scenario, they would usually portray the girl as being just kind of missing from the family and doesn't care about the family, like busybody, like a Tina Fey in 30 Rock type of character, where she is working, doesn't have time for a family. But then you do see her come home at the end of each night and be there with her family, and having Scott be a little insecure as a husband when it was actually misconstrued in one of the episodes. Dawn thought that he didn't really believe in her and he was just intimidated by her. And I thought that was such a healthy way to portray the working woman without saying that they are just working. And having the whole conversation, again, it's a constant theme of serious topics, but just in a playful way. The whole New York lonely boy really stemmed from the fact of Dawn not wanting to have another kid, but her husband wanting to, and being worried that her kid will be the New York lonely boy.
You make a really good point comparing Dawn to other Tina Fey characters. Like, this, again, it just feels, when you compare it to 30 Rock, I think Dawn is a more evolved, Liz Lemon, and Wiki is a more evolved Jenna Maroney, Jane Krakowski's character, and it feels like just the fresh equivalent of those two in a new setting and in a new world. Liz, I don't know if you're a 30 Rock person, if you have what you think.
I'm a 30 Rock person.
Yeah, I thought you were.
Yeah, no, I think that dynamic. I think you've hit upon something interesting there, though. I feel like the characters are different enough that it's like, you know, I think referring to them as an evolution is the right way to do it. They're also, you know, tonally it's a very different show in a lot of respects. Like, I think it's a little less heightened than 30 Rock in a lot of ways, and you know, it has a different kind of grounding to it than 30 Rock often lent itself to. But yeah, you know, I think there are certain. I think the fact that they so often paired up Dawn and Wiki together kind of speaks to how that dynamic really plays well for them, both in terms of comedy and drama.
Yeah, it was interesting. A plot device was with the foursome. It was oftentimes Dawn and Wiki, quite literally, because Wiki spent a lot of time living in Dawn's home. And then it was Summer and Gloria, and that twosome was a lot about helping each other, you know, with issues around relationships and identity, and like kind of, you know, it was kind of felt a little bit like heavier, which is interesting because those characters feel a little bit lighter. Like Wiki and Dawn feel this more kind of intensity, in my opinion, whereas Summer and Gloria have kind of this more lighthearted energy. That was my kind of take. You could disagree, but the two, when you compare the dynamics. So Rebecca, what did you think of that decision to really make that a plot device of, like, when you see overtime moments of these characters having important moments throughout the show, it's more often than not in that two and in that two?
Yeah, the way I was looking at it is that kind of mentorships. I was kind of seeing Dawn being a mentor to Wiki, despite Wiki not thinking she needs that or even wanting that. Dawn really did help her go through. She let her live there. The last line in the last episode was, "Oh, can I get a job at your restaurant?" And from Wiki to Dawn. So I think that was kind of a mentorship in itself. And then Gloria and Summer being their own pairing, and Gloria kind of being the mentor for Summer, but then within each pairing needing help away. I think they did a good job of breaking it up, because I think in a normal TV show like structure, they would have the one main character and her three friends with their separate storylines. But instead of just making, well, Dawn was the main character, they didn't even put that much focus on her, and breaking it up pair and pair, I think, was the way to give each person their respected screen time.
Totally agree. Like it's and I think what's interesting is Dawn was more central in the beginning, and she got less and less central, which isn't anything against Dawn. It's more just that the show is set up with her as somewhat of the protagonist, but as the show evolves, it becomes clear that every single person in that group is equally important. And so I like that decision to anchor it on Dawn, and kind of at the end of a lot of episodes or the start of episodes, it's at Dawn's house. It's like we're kind of waking up with her, we're ending the day with her, and it's this grounding approach, like letting us into the world. And then over time, we spend a lot more time on the other characters. So I loved that. Okay, so the last big topic I want to think about and talk about is season 2. As we know, it's happening. So what are everybody's predictions, hopes? What do you want to happen? What do you think will happen? Rebecca, I will start with you.
Yeah, I have a kind of controversial take on this. So Big Little Lies, as a very different vibe but similar show, there was a second season, although people thought it should have ended in the first. I don't think Girls5eva will play out that way, that people think that, but at the end of Big Little Lies and at the end of Girls5eva, they kind of get in trouble. And I don't know if the show will take this approach, but kind of having them reap the repercussions of sneaking onto stage at Jingle Ball and performing, which they really kept to a lot of the realisticness of the show. And I know obviously they do ridiculous things and that they get away with, but I think that it would actually be kind of cool if they kind of got in trouble, and we saw how that panned out, because they are really good at bringing stuff back to real life. So super interesting.
Yeah, Liz, what about you? What do you think?
I'm looking right now. Actually, I pulled up the interview I did with Meredith Scardina, because I did ask her directly about what she was thinking about in terms of season 2 plans. So she was talking about, she was in that interview, she talks a fair amount about, a little bit about how, you know, she thinks both Summer and Gloria are going to be having different approaches to their dating lives. And, you know, I'm just kind of giving the close notes, but Dawn is also, you know, she thinks that Dawn's writing in writing and creating a music is going to be a bigger thing. Like, that's going to be the kind of, I would not be surprised if that was a major thrust of season 2, is like her really engaging with that passion.
Yeah, I do hope though, for character development purposes and just kind of annoyance purposes, that they tone down Wiki a little bit with a lot of her. She left again. She wikied the group again. And although it was more of a misunderstanding, they let that play out. So I really think maybe making Wiki toned down and more grounded and more like Dawn, actually. I kind of hope the episode that Dawn kind of got all diva-ish in herself, like, I think maybe if they did a little like role reversal, that could be a good way to balance the show, because I think come a second season, Wiki might be pretty unlikable if they keep the same storyline without any development.
Yeah, I see that. Like, she definitely is one of the characters that feels more over the top than others, and you know, there are certain things they're parodying with her that definitely feel like they don't give her a lot in terms of character development.
Yeah, I would love to see Dawn do more songwriting. Her song "I'm Afraid," I think that was my favorite song of the whole show. It's just like so specific. Like, everyone should go listen to it. But like things people are afraid of, like that someone will have sex with her dead body and they'll be like, wasn't worth it. Like, what? Like, it's crazy and so specific and bizarre. And I love that kind of humor. And she's singing with like sincere, intense Sarah Bareilles voice, like that you would hear on Love Song or her old like stuff that everybody kind of, you know, had that, you know, people just found very serious and heartfelt. And she's singing with that, you know, and so I think to hear Dawn have more songs that she writes and sings with that kind of passion, even if it's ridiculous, I would love that. Liz, I have one more question for you. Sure. What, in all of your interviews with the cast, the crew, the writers, what was one of the most sort of surprising or unexpected things that you heard, something that a viewer might not expect to know or to think?
You're so cool, Liz.
You're so cool.
I'm not that.
We're big fans.
I show up at junkets and they let me talk to people sometimes. You know, that's tough, because I think, you know, I think there did genuinely seem to be a real bond between like the four leads. Like, you know, you hear that all the freaking time. Oh, we were just like a family, etc. It is sometimes true, and it is sometimes extraordinarily untrue. And it depends dramatically on when they're talking and who you're talking to. But in general, it did seem like they really created a nice vibe. Like, I've been hearing, there's been a kind of conversation around shows that have been shot in the pandemic where, and I think it's for those of you, it's like, you know, because shooting something during a pandemic, it turns out is significantly more stressful than shooting something outside of pandemic. It seems like a lot of people are looking back on the experience and seeing it like as a bonding thing. Like, oh man, we survived shooting. We survived making television during the pandemic. It was an extra level of bonding beyond what we were doing, beyond what we normally have on set. And that, so whether it's a factor in that, whether it's just a factor in that these are 4 people, they cast 4 leads who genuinely seem to like each other, who knows? But it did seem to be like, a great group of people, and theoretically, they should, when season 2 rolls around, they should be probably very happy to get back to work together.
Yeah, I read in your interview with Renee Elise Goldsberry, she was like, I knew we were going to have a season 2 before anybody even told me. Like, when you feel it, you feel it. She said something to you, like, this chemistry is, she used that word so many times, chemistry, like, and it was just, she was so genuine. It seemed like, was that kind of the sense you got? She was like, this is magic, pure magic, like, and of course, this is going to be legendary.
Yeah, I mean, you always got to take that stuff with a grain of salt, just because, I mean, in in interview situations like that, that person's job is literally to make the show sound as good as possible. Like that's what they're being paid for. But at the same time, like I did believe her. Like I did feel like the show sounded like a great experience, and it certainly. I think for everyone involved, this is something I heard. An executive producer was talking about his comedy show that also includes musical elements, and what he said was every comedian wants to be a musician, and every musician wants to do comedy, and so I think for we've got Sarah Renee Lee Goldsberry, who do not have a ton of comedy experience between them, and you have Paula Powell and Busy Phillips who have a lot of comedy experience but not necessarily a lot of music experience, and so it's the best of both worlds for all of them. Is that they all get to do something they don't get to do a lot of necessarily, and that seems like it makes for a happy cast.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I've heard that, and this show is the perfect example of it. Like, most of them are kind of, they come from one or the other, and they seem happy to have, to be doing both. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing it. It seemed all of your articles were so fun to read. So everyone should do that. We're going to we'll link up what you did and all that stuff. So everyone should go read all of Liz's work for this show and in general. Cool. Okay. So does anyone else have anything to add before we kind of wrap up?
Excited for season 2?
Season 2. I don't think we know yet when it's going to happen. But we're going to be thinking about it. I'm certainly going to probably watch the show back or listen to the Spotify soundtrack. It's all, if you haven't listened, just listen, on your commute to work, if you're working in person now, or just whatever you're doing, if you're cleaning your house. It just kind of takes, I find the soundtrack takes you out of your head a little bit and out of the little dumb things in the world and in a day, and it makes you kind of just be nothing really matters that much. Everything's kind of okay. That's how I feel when I listen to it.
Yeah, you don't even need to watch a show to listen to the songs. They're not character specific. They're just genuinely bops, but also funny.
Yeah, it's sort of like the female equivalent of The Lonely Island, I think, with the parody stuff, but instead of this dude rap vibe, it's female drama ballad, and then some poppy anthems, So it's that's what I would think is it's kind of if you love Lonely Island and you kind of want more of that feminine energy equivalent of the jokes and the this is that. I'll also add, we didn't talk too much about it, but this is what everyone I've talked to is saying. This show, I think, will be known in addition to for the music and all that, for the jokes per minute. That's what everyone's talking about.
Yes.
It is so fast. It's crazy. So if you watch it once, you'll watch another time, and there'll be things you didn't hear the first time. And I think that's why there's something for everyone. If one joke goes over your head, the next one you're gonna love. So, if you guys, I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that. But that's just something I wanted to touch on quickly, because that's very, I think, central to the show.
No, I would agree. I watched the show with subtitles via the NBC Universal streaming site, which does not have subtitles available. And so something I really want to do at some point is rewatch the whole thing with subtitles on, because I feel like I read faster than I hear, frankly. So I'll pick I'm sure there's going to be a million jokes I've missed that I'll be finding.
Yeah, definitely. I watched with subtitles, and that was game changing. I went back a few times and I was like, what is that joke again? Because it is literally just joke after joke. And they do that while covering such deep topics too. And I just think it was genius.
Yeah, that's kind of the magic of it. I was taking notes while I was watching, and it's I had to keep stopping and starting just because I wasn't even taking analytical notes. I was just writing down quotes that I wanted for myself, little the piano that's named after a Jeffrey Epstein accomplice. I mean, it's just ridiculous, or Dawn saying, "I've been to every women's march that has passed my house." It's just it's so good. Or another Dawn one is oh, I went to Catholic school, so I my only sex education was what I saw in paintings. It's
Yeah.
like you'll blink and you miss it, but it's like every little bit of magic. It's like it's unbelievable. I'm gonna just scroll through really quickly, and we'll play this game. I'm just gonna like say a couple things out of context, and if you laugh, you laugh. Here we go. For tax purposes, it's 4 wheelchairs. It had been an entire Zendaya since you recorded music.
I wrote that one down.
Yeah. It's true. It's been a Zendaya. Let's start using that as like a century.
Yes.
It's like a,
I don't want to use
10
that.
years, 20 years.
That is so funny.
Okay, this is my favorite because I love this food item. Smoked salmon in fish or vape? I mean,
I was smelling that. I literally was smelling that. I was like, oh my God.
unreal.
Yeah, and part of me
Unreal.
thinks it would be gross, and then another part of me is curious.
I would love it. Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay, here we go. Thanks, Lil Ho. That was funny. Ibiza and Arizona. Okay, here we go. Behind every great song is an even better salad.
I love the salad storyline. I loved it.
Okay. I think those are my big
was great.
ones. Let's see.
Yeah.
I'll redo this one because I have it in exact quotes. I went to Catholic school. I only know what they show in paintings. Yeah.
It's so good.
Oh my gosh. Okay, those were just like I eventually I was like, okay, I can't write everything that makes me laugh. So I was like,
Yeah.
it was crazy.
Yeah.
But again, the jokes per minute, like you can't like watch the show and clean your house. I mean, at the 5th time, then do that. But like this is like prime entertainment. Like the entertainment value per minute, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Incredible. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much, Rebecca and Liz, for having fun with me and talking about this show, and everybody listening. Let us know, what you think. I'd love to hear your takes, and I want to keep talking about the show, and I'm sure, this show's going to be legendary if it isn't already. So yeah, okay. So thank you again so much. That is pretty much our show. So Rebecca, where can people find you?
You could find me at Rebarbecue on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and try not to be disappointed.
They won't be. She's very And Liz, in addition to Collider, we're going to link everything. Everybody, these interviews are so great. You did such a great job. Where can everybody find you generally?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much on Twitter at Lizlet, and I was going to say, I'm going to try to start promoting my Letterboxd more, because I like Letterboxd, and I'm trying to update it more frequently. But I also can't remember what my Letterboxd username is at this moment, and I feel like this is the oldest I've ever felt in my entire life right now. Like, oh, find me on the Letterboxd. I'm there somewhere. Maybe Lizlet, maybe Liz Shannon Miller. Who knows? But yes. If you want to find me on Letterboxd, that's fun. But yeah, you can also find me on largely on Twitter at Lizlet. My website is lizshannonmiller.com, where I don't think I have a link to my Letterboxd. I should add that.
We'll get on it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Or maybe a listener will find it and text and DM.
Yeah, if a listener wants to let me know my Letterboxd username is, that'd be really helpful.
DM it to Liz on Twitter. Well, as for me, I am just so excited about everything that we have coming up for SNL Stats. You can find me personally at Nicole Rovine on Instagram and Twitter, or at SNL Stats Instagram and Twitter. John and I are on there in the DMs. We just love chatting with everybody who reaches out to us. It makes our day, so never hesitate to say hi and chat there. It makes us so happy. And then just gonna talk for a second about what we have coming up. So it is the summer, but SNL Stats is not slowing down anytime soon. We have a lot of fun stuff coming up. So we're going to do a superfan takeover next week. John will be back. He's breaking his rule. He's going to take over the superfan takeover, which will be very amusing. It's always fun when John is on a Superfan takeover. I don't know when the last time that happened was, if ever. It's going to be a fun treat because he let me host this one. I said, once you know the premise of Girls5eva, you got to give me the reins for the hosting. No boys allowed this week. So he's coming back next week. So we're going to do that. And then throughout the summer, that's going to be a cast draft, by the way. So all-time picks for present, past, everything, cast members. What would be your all-time draft? And, we take it very seriously, of course. We, it's going to be really interesting. A lot of hot takes, a lot of, in-depth analysis about the, why should you choose person A and person B, and, the utility value, very hardcore stuff. So it's going to be really fun. I'm intrigued to listen. I'm very excited. And then, just throughout the summer, we're going to have a trivia night coming up. We're going to let us know if you like the bonus coverage. We're thinking about covering other TV shows in the comedy SNL wider universe. Just let us know. We're going to be here all summer and so excited for season 47, too, of SNL. And with that, from Rebecca North, Liz Shannon Miller, and Nicole Rovine, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day and be well.
Here on SNL Stats.